Chapter 1. Once, when I was 6 years old, I saw a marvelous picture in a book on rainforests called Real Life Stories. It depicted a boa constrictor swallowing a wild animal. Here is a replica of the picture. In the book it said, boa constrictors swallow their prey whole without chewing. Afterwards, they cannot move and sleep for 6 months digesting. I thought a great deal about goings-on in the jungle and, in turn, with a crayon, managed to produce my first drawing, my drawing number 1. It was like this. I showed my masterpiece to the grown-ups and asked them if my drawing frightened them. They answered, "What's frightening about a hat?" My drawing was not of a hat. It showed a boa constrictor digesting an elephant. I then drew the insides of the boa constrictor so that the grown-ups could understand. They're always looking for explanations. My drawing number 2 was like this. The grown-ups advised me to set drawings of open or closed boa constrictors aside and to concentrate instead on geography, history, mathematics, and grammar. So it was at the age 6 that I abandoned a magnificent career as a painter. I'd been discouraged by the failure of my drawing number 1 and my drawing number 2. Grown-ups never understand anything on their own, and it's tiring for children to be forever and ever explaining. Having to choose another profession, I learned to fly planes. I flew a little all over the world, and it's true that geography served me well. At a glance, I could distinguish China from Arizona. That's very useful if you get lost in the night. And so, in the course of my life, I've had lots of encounters with lots of serious people. I have lived a great deal among grown-ups. I have seen them up close. It hasn't done much to improve my opinion. Whenever I met one who seemed faintly perceptive, I subjected them to the experiment with my drawing number 1, which I've always kept. I wanted to know if they could really understand, but they always answered, "It's a hat." So I would tell them nothing about boa constrictors, rainforests, or the stars. I put myself at their level. I spoke to them about bridge, golf, politics, neckties, and the grown-up was very pleased to know such a reasonable man. Chapter 2. And so I lived alone with no one really to talk to until a breakdown in the Saharan desert 6 years ago. 6 years ago. Something had failed in my engine. As I had neither passengers nor a mechanic, I was getting ready to attempt, all on my own, some difficult repairs. It was a matter of life or death. I had scarcely enough drinking water to last 8 days. That first night I went to sleep on the sand 1,000 miles from any human dwelling. I was much more alone than a person shipwrecked on a raft in the middle of the ocean. So can you imagine my surprise when, at sunrise, a strange little voice woke me. It said, "Please, draw me a sheep." Huh? Draw me a sheep. I leapt to my feet as if struck by lightning. I rubbed my eyes thoroughly. I had a good look, and I saw an altogether extraordinary little fellow who was watching me with a solemn expression. Here is the best portrait that I was able to make of him later on. But, of course, my drawing is much less beautiful than the model. It's not my fault. Grown-ups had discouraged me from my artistic career when I was 6, and I hadn't learned to draw anything other than open or closed boa constrictors. So I was watching this apparition with wide, astonished eyes. Don't forget that I was 1,000 miles away from any human dwelling. Yet my little fellow looked neither lost nor dying of weariness, dying of hunger, dying of thirst, or dying of fear. He seemed nothing like a child lost in the middle of the desert, and, uh, 1,000 miles from any human dwelling. When at last I managed to speak, I asked him, "But what are you doing out here?" And he said again, very softly, in all seriousness, "Please, draw me a sheep." When the mystery is too overwhelming, you dare not disobey. As absurd as it seemed to me, 1,000 miles from any human dwelling and in mortal danger, I reached into my pocket for a piece of paper and a pen. Then I remembered that I had studied mostly geography, history, mathematics, and grammar, and I said to the little fellow, in something of a bad mood, that I didn't know how to draw. He replied, "It doesn't matter. Draw me a sheep." As I had never drawn a sheep, I redid, for his benefit, one of the only 2 drawings I was capable of, that of the closed boa constrictor, and I was astounded to hear the little man reply, No, I don't want an elephant inside a boa constrictor. A boa constrictor is dangerous, and an elephant is very bulky. My home is very small. I need a sheep. Draw me a sheep." So I drew. He looked carefully, then said, "No, that one's already very ill. Do another." I drew. My friend smiled kindly, indulgently. "See for yourself. That's not a sheep. It's a ram. It's got horns." So I redid my drawing again, but it was rejected like the previous ones. "That one's too old. I want a sheep that will live a long time." Finally, my patience at an end. As I was in a hurry to start dismantling my engine, I scribbled this drawing, and I exclaimed, "That's the crate. The sheep you want is inside." But I was very surprised to see my young critic's face light up. That's exactly how I wanted it. Do you think the sheep needs a lot of grass?" "Why?" "Because my place is very small." "I'm sure it'll be enough. I've given you a very small sheep." He bent his head over the drawing. "Not that small. Look, it's fallen asleep." And so it was that I made the acquaintance of the little prince.